Hey guys, welcome to Accidents on Trial. Let me know as always if you guys are having any trouble hearing me. Um, Today I'm going to have Julius come on and have a conversation with me. He's a Christian. Um, Honestly, I had a bit of a mental lapse and for some reason thought it was Saturday all day today. Then I realized that it wasn't, so I'm a little bit not necessarily the most prepared, but I think we're just looking to have a conversation. It's not really a formal debate or anything, just a sharing of ideas. And so I'll just bring him right in and we can begin. Hey, Julius.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Thanks again for coming on. I appreciate it.
Oh man, glad to be here, man. Appreciate you having me.
So why don't you give the audience a little bit of background about yourself and who you are?
All right, yeah, man. My name is Julius, from Tampa, Florida. Uh, I became a Christian around the time I was about 18, 19-ish. And since then, I've just like most Christians have a bunch of ups and downs, and I really didn't have like a firm foundation. So throughout the recent years, I started to kind of dig in a little deeper, and that's when I've been really getting a better understanding and clarity on scriptures, history, and all sorts of things, prophecy. And I just moved up to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so now I'm here, just seeing how God could use me.
Cool. So I guess the main question that I have is, what is it that convinced you that Christianity is true, and what evidence would you bring forth that you think should convince other people, including myself, that Christianity is true?
Well, what initially convinced me was a experience I had. You know, I had multiple signs that I, initially weren't seeing them as signs, and then ultimately, one event, which was a couple of events, happened that got my attention, and I'm like, okay, this is God. And then since then, I knew what I had was real, and I got the Holy Spirit, and that was the ultimate, like, experience that I've ever had, and I continue to have. I have this supernatural, you know experiences with God, throughout my walk with God, just confirming that what I believe is true. Now I know that's not always convincing for most people, because anybody can say they had any type of experience, but for me, that was the foundation of what I believe. It wasn't until recent that I'm discovering the evidences that are out there that you know anybody should believe it. It's credible information.
Okay, so and I would love to get into what that evidence is, but just as a kind of a quick background, so you know a little bit of where I'm coming from. I talk to a lot of theists who want to say things like, you're just suppressing the idea that God exists, and really you don't believe because you want to go out and sin, and that kind of rhetoric. And my thing is this: like, I don't have anything in principle against any idea being true. It's not that I'm in principle against the idea of God being true. I'm open to whatever evidence is there. My problem is that in all the years that I've been studying these kinds of things, I'm yet to run into a piece of evidence that I find even remotely convincing, or argument that I find even remotely convincing. When you say something like, you've had a supernatural experience, that you know that it was the Holy Spirit that came into you. I'm not sitting here saying that I know that's not true, because I would have no way of knowing that. My thing is, what method do you have that you can put forth to show that these experiences aren't just a product of your psychology? That's the issue that I run into is, how do we separate the imaginary from the actual? How do you know that it's the Holy Spirit? How do you know that it's God, and not uh, your psychological state in the moment, or what you want to be true, or what you've contextualized in your culture as, being the case? Like, how do you show that that's God and not something else?
I mean, to show it, uh, it's a little easier if you knew me before this experience. Um, before it happened, I was a totally different dude. I did a lot of different things that I like after it happened. I completely let go of those things, and certain things that initially, like for instance, I used to smoke weed. I used to party, do a lot of things, have sex. I became abstinent. I became sober. And those things were things that at the time there's no reason for me to give up those things, if something didn't happen. I think most people who do certain things, they're not just gonna give up sex, for nothing, for something that didn't happen. You know what I'm saying?
So right, yeah, yeah. So, well, let me clarify, because I would never sit here and dismiss your experience as far as something having happened that was transformative for you. Of course, I believe when you say that, and I think that's true for many people. I've heard many religious testimonies of people who, their life changed once they converted. I also know of many people who are not non-believers, who are atheists, who have had their lives changed drastically once they've left their religion. I believe you when you tell me that you gave up those things. I guess what I question is, how do you know that it wasn't what you needed to do psychologically, in the sense that maybe you were engaging in those behaviors and weren't fulfilled, and felt like something was missing, and then, psychologically, maybe religion was the context in which it facilitated that change. But I guess what I'm saying is that I don't see that as evidence that something supernatural happened. I see it as evidence that something psychological happened.
well,
That's my issue.
well, just kind of address one of the points that you made. Well, when I typically talk to people who become religious or have life changing stories and stuff like that, with different religions and different like I said, atheists and different worldviews, when you hear what made them change, I mean, at least in my experiences, most of them don't have like a supernatural beginning. It's usually, hey, my mom died, or certain events took place that made me think I need to get my life together, or something happened. And some people do. I've heard some people believe certain things were signs. You know, and I believe that certain things are just coincidences. I do believe in coincidences, that, or some people could see signs and interpret them the wrong way, but most of the time I don't hear these type of stories. I usually hear, something happened, my mom, something happened drastic to make me change my life. But when it comes to even Christianity as a as the foundation, the beginnings of Christianity, it has always been a supernatural thing that happened that made people radically change their lives. And for me, that's what it was. It was something that I had no motive. I had no motive on becoming a Christian. I was definitely enjoying my life. I was 18. You know what I'm saying? I was 18. I was enjoying my life. Doing what my friends did. I never felt like something's missing. I never felt empty inside. For me, I just had no motive. And as a matter of fact, the people who were around me, who seen me change, they were looking at me crazy, like, what? Like, Julius, what is you doing? Like, you're not coming out with us. You're not doing this anymore. You praying? They was looking at me like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid or something. And I can't deny what I experienced. And just like I said, in early Christianity, they couldn't the early disciples as well as the early followers of Christ, they were all martyred and persecuted, because they believe they seen Jesus resurrected. And so that testify that is all throughout history, people have been saying they've been having the same experience, and I think that's the difference between somebody just having a general experience. Sorry about that, my baby.
No worries. So I guess my problem is this, though, with what you're saying is that the how would I say this? The statements that the grounds for these changes are supernatural is what I'm asking you to not even prove, because I don't think you can necessarily really prove anything with certainty, but provide credible evidence that that is what happened. I don't see any reason, from my perspective, to assume that these changes have to have a supernatural cause, as opposed to simply being facts about our psychology. People change for many different reasons, even often unknown to ourselves at the time. People are not the best judges of their own psychology, me
Right,
included.
when we're talking about like we're talking in the billions at this point.
Sure.
Of people who are saying that they've had the same experience, and go to bed. Go to bed. Go to bed. Okay, go get mom. Sorry about that.
No worries.
They're supposed to be in bed. But if all of these billions of people at this point are saying that they are having the same experience by following basically the same steps that Jesus taught, and they are willing to go to the death, like at this, even when
Sure.
I first became a Christian, I was willing, I was on fire, and I still am. I'm willing to go to death with this. Like, there's nothing that's going to tell me that what I experienced was fake. Now, if you want to say that we're all crazy, or we're all just having, I mean, not necessarily crazy, but you know what I'm saying, that we're all just kind of making this up in our head. I don't know the psychology. I've taken psychology courses, but I don't know of a case of billions of people having the same experience and they're all making it up. I know that certain things are possible. I think certain people can be easily convinced by their culture, by their peers, to force themselves to think that they're having these beliefs. But we're talking about billions of people, and from all different cultures, different people from all different academics. You know what I'm saying? There's scientists, professors, there's all kinds of people who share this same experience, and that just adds more credibility, especially being that it's from thousands of years ago.
Let me address all of that, because you put it all on the table, which I think is valid. But let me approach it this way. The first thing is, from my perspective, is that the amount of people who believe in a claim is actually, regardless of the claim it is irrelevant to whether or not the claim is true. I mean, at one point in life, at one point, everybody thought that the Earth was flat.
Well,
the whole world.
I don't mean to interrupt you. It's not just the claim; it's the shared experience.
Sure, but here's the thing with that. This is the problem with what you're saying, is that yes, there are billions of Christians who talk about having a similar experience. However, there are also billions of Muslims who are claiming to have a similar experience. There are atheists that are claiming to have, like, these
supernatural claims of experiences to Islam. As a matter of fact, Muhammad said himself that he's not coming to share any signs or miracles. He's not a miracle worker. He's just a messenger. That was Muhammad's claim.
Well, but what I mean is, yeah, but they still believe. I mean, I've spoken with Muslims who still believe that the supernatural is something that is possible and has happened, and that their individual transformation, because not all Muslims believe exactly the same thing. I've spoken with Muslims, I've spoken with people of other religions who all describe a similar experience of internal change that they attribute to the supernatural. The problem is that, from my perspective, this is a human thing. Like, I know atheists that are having this transcendent, transformative experience, and change the way that they see the world, whether it's through
How
meditation or what's that?
how so? I mean, if you're an atheist, then you don't believe in supernatural.
Right, but that's the difference, is that the experience of change is the same, but what you're attributing that change to and what you believe based upon that change is going to differ. That's the issue.
Well,
And which is why I say that the fundamental component to this is the fact that these experiences are shared throughout all cultures, all different belief systems, including people who don't believe, who are not religious, that are having these what they would call spiritual, for lack of a better word, experiences, show that there is something that's more fundamental than the particular culture and context, religion-wise, that you've attributed to. It's a psychological thing that's true about people, and I don't see any reason to. I would never say that all Christians, or even most Christians or most Muslims, are crazy. I'm not saying that. It being a psychological explanation is not the same thing as saying that somebody's crazy.
right.
It's saying that there are components to what we are, and the kind of experiences that we seek, the kind of things that impact us deeply, that people, I think, mistakenly then contextualize in a way where, oh, well, I've had this experience in this context, therefore Christianity must be true. Or I've had this experience in this context, therefore Islam must be true. Or any other religion. I mean, I speak with Wiccans, people who believe in witchcraft and multiple gods, who believe that they've come into contact.
Stuff is real, man. I'm aware of witchcraft, and if you just look into society as a whole, you'll see there's a lot of witchcraft being practiced, and even in our government, as well as secret societies. There's a lot of it out there. So I'm not a denier of other sources of supernatural
Well, see,
activity.
but I am, in the sense that I don't see any reason to take any of these explanations as being what you're calling them to be. Not that I know they're not. They're like, I would never say that I know the supernatural doesn't exist, because I would have to have all possible knowledge to make the statement. It's not that I'm saying it's impossible. What I'm saying is that we know that that psychology is complex. We know that people can be mistaken about what they attribute their experience to. For example, I don't know if you ever heard of the miracle of Fatima. Have you heard of that?
That's what the Hindu god that I forgot what it does.
There are many examples, and even something simpler like mega churches, like how there are many situations that there are these churches where literally thousands of people will claim that they've felt the presence of the Holy Spirit and that they've healed from their pain and all these things. Now, all of this can be explained psychologically. In fact, they've brought in people who've infiltrated these churches. There's a special that I can send you a link to after this, of a guy who pretended to be a preacher, and like learn all the kind of the tools that preachers have, and the way in which they engage with the audiences, to show that this is a lot of the stuff is manipulation. Is convincing people who want to believe, who are seeking something, even if they don't know it at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I totally like I'm totally aware of all of that, and I'm familiar with that stuff. That's the type of stuff that before, like I said, I had no motive on becoming a Christian, and upon becoming a Christian, I've looked into different aspects of Christianity, different ministries and different churches, and and I'm aware that there are a lot of uh, uh, movements out there that are based on just money, manipulation. You're 100% right about you know uh, the psychology that goes into certain aspects of religion.
But so how can you tell? But how can you know? Because those people there who were present, they thought they had a real experience. They thought they were coming into contact with the Holy Spirit. They were convinced of it, and yet the people that were setting all this up were frauds. They weren't, what they were doing wasn't real.
So
And so when you tell me that you are convinced, that you
mhm.
know that what you had was this experience, and that millions of Christians are having this experience, and that is evidence for Christianity, I more point you to the reality of the situation, which is people believe all kinds of things, people have all kinds of changes, people have all kinds of certainties, and I don't see any reason to assume that it is a supernatural thing as opposed to a psychological one.
So I think the one thing that you I guess you're not aware of, I guess, because I guess as a Christian, these are things that I've looked into, and I think there are a lot of Christians that are aware of this too. But just because one person is trying to manipulate somebody to become a Christian, that doesn't mean that the person being manipulated, so to speak, doesn't have true faith.
Oh, sure.
Somebody could be preaching the gospel just to get paid, but within the crowd that's being preached to, that person could have a supernatural experience and become a true follower of Christ based off of a false preacher. You
So
know,
I agree with you. I agree that they could be having, and I think anybody, like I said earlier, I'm not sitting here telling you that I know you didn't have a supernatural experience. What I'm saying is that there's a difference between what's possible and what is actually the case.
it,
Like, it could be the case,
and
but it could not be the case.
and when you because a lot of things just going back to some of the things you said before is just again, when we talk about like Islam, you know most of the Muslims that I speak to, they say that the only miracle is basically the Quran. That's what ultimately makes most Muslims become Muslims. I mean, in very few cases have I ever heard of somebody say, "Hey, this miracle happened, and that's what made me become a Muslim." But usually they say, "Hey, Islam just makes more sense." I believe God sent His prophets and X and O's. You know what I'm saying? But I think the one thing about Christianity that makes the case stronger is that if you ask if you ask 10 out of 10 true believers of Christianity, they will all unanimously say they have shared the very same experience of receiving the Holy Spirit. Now, the Holy Spirit was just like one aspect of my foundation. That's what keeps me grounded, solid, never moving, because it wasn't just one experience. Like it's day in and day out. It's from sometimes I don't feel the spirit, but when I keep walking with God and I keep growing, I'll feel His presence again. And I know that this isn't just me making this up, because it's usually in moments where like something's happening. Like, so God is trying to tell me something. I'll just give you a quick. I'll just try to make a long story short. I am a introvert, by nature. I'm not the type of person. I don't like being on the screen. I don't like meeting and greeting and talking to people. But one day I felt the spirit telling me to go knock on doors, and I'm like, you got the wrong person. And I didn't want to do it at all. but I felt a strong conviction of the Spirit telling me to go knock on doors and basically preach the gospel. And like it was the most awkwardest thing at first. Like I was knocking on people's doors, like, "Hey, do you know Jesus?" It was just like very awkward. But ultimately, I knocked on a couple doors and then I was ready to go home. But then I felt the presence again telling me, no, finish. Like I was in this neighborhood and I felt the presence telling me to finish the neighborhood. And then when I tell you the last person who answered their door was a girl who was telling me, hey, I, I can't believe you just knocked on my door. I was just about to commit suicide. She had been contemplating commit suicide, and she said if God doesn't send nobody, or if God if does she basically said if you don't come and reach me, then she was gonna kill herself. And then next thing you know, I'm knocking on her door. You know, that's
Okay.
just one of multiple instances that I just know that God be speaking to me. And
But
I
see, but this
feel
is the problem. That right there is the issue. You say that you know that it was God who did this. What I'm saying is that you don't have the methodology to know that, because I mean, I've had similar situations where I've talked to strangers. I just felt compelled to talk to somebody, and they told me that I saved their life. Just the other day, 2 weeks ago, I spoke with someone who's a believer in, like, I forget exactly the kind of religion, but it's one of those like uh, multiple gods type of thing. It's like, I think, pagan, some kind of pagan, who told me a very similar story, that they felt compelled by what they thought was speaking to them to do something very similar. Now, they didn't stop somebody from committing suicide necessarily, but it pushed them to do to go out and do things that they wouldn't normally do.
and
Uh,
and and then let me get to that too, because yeah, like I said before, I do believe that there are spirits, and I'm not saying that people who believe different religions, and like I said, with Wiccans and stuff like that they don't hear voices, hear spirits, and they don't speak to them. I do believe that is something that does actually happen. What makes me believe that when I'm hearing is from God and not just any other spirit or any just my own mind. Um, is just the, like I said, the credibility of Jesus Christ Himself. I you know it it is mind boggling to me that somebody who was a Jewish carpenter, like I can't get over the fact that he was just a Jewish carpenter who got the whole world from throughout history believing in him. You know, he was crucified and he died on the cross. You know, and then he rose from the dead. You know, that type of credibility is beyond. He was casting out demons, and these are the things that the people around him said, because he didn't write the gospels. The eyewitnesses wrote the gospels. you
okay, so let's address that, because I think it's like at a core issue that I have with Christians, is that and not just Christians, but people in general, is that I hear a lot of claims. What I don't hear is credible evidence that these claims are true. So, for example, I just had a biblical scholar on last episode, right? You're talking about the eyewitnesses. Um, Eyewitness testimony is, I mean, in the context of the supernatural, from my perspective, is quite irrelevant, because of the fact that we know what we know about psychology. We know that people can be wrong about what they're perceiving.
yeah,
This is, I mean, this is not something I'm making up. This is,
yeah,
you can
that's
research it.
I mean, that should be common knowledge.
And that's not to say that I'm not claiming that people are just hallucinating the same thing left and right. I'm saying that people can just be wrong about what they think they're feeling. As far as the eyewitnesses for Jesus, um, the only source, as far as I know, that talks about eyewitnesses are Paul's letters. And if you look at the word "seen" translated in that context, in that language, it didn't just mean seeing corporally. It could have meant any number of things. It could have meant visions. It could have meant dreams. It could have meant presence, like feeling of a presence there. Uh, the entire notion of the resurrection and what constituted the resurrection changed over time. It wasn't one story. You know how right now we have so many different brands of Christianity?
Um, I mean, they're all based on the same thing, except
Sure,
for
sure. But you know, you have people who believe different variations of Christianity, right? Well, back then you had people who believed different variations of what they meant by the resurrection. There were people who thought that the resurrection was a corporeal thing. There were people who thought that Jesus had always been a a spiritual being who wasn't actually a human being. There were people who thought that it was a spiritual being that became a human being.
um,
Um,
those, like we talking about like Gnosticism. I mean, those don't come from one, the disciples of Christ, nor also they come, way after the fact. Like when you talk about like the gospel of Barnabas and stuff like that, like all those extra, sources that those extra beliefs don't come from the core, and that's the reason why
oh,
like
I disagree. I disagree with you. Those were in the beginning before they start
the only one that came, within like the first second century was Gospel of Thomas, but
I would urge you to if you have time at some point later on to go to take a look at the episode that I had on before this one, because I had Captain Deadpool, who's a biblical scholar, to come on, and he goes into depth about the variations of beliefs of the people at the time as to what actually happened and how they understood the resurrection, because it wasn't all the same. My point is this: that even with something, forget supernatural claims, even something like a daily events. Eyewitness testimony is a very poor level of evidence, even in something like the court system, because we know that the human mind can change a sequence of events, can change the color of somebody's shirt, can change the things somebody said. Like DNA evidence is always going to trump eyewitness testimony in the context of a courtroom. That's not to say that it's useless. It still has its use. But there's a difference in saying, I saw, here's an example. If I say I went to Bernie Sanders rally, okay, and I visually saw Bernie Sanders give a speech, that's a different kind of claim than saying I went to a Bernie Sanders rally and saw him levitate and fly around like he has magical powers. The two kind of claims are not the same. They require different kinds of evidence. Eyewitness testimony in that context it's not going to be enough, because we know that people can be wrong about what they're perceiving for a variety of psychological reasons. So you're choosing, you're ignoring the psychology that's known and just choosing to believe that it's more likely that they actually saw a resurrection. But you haven't shown that that's something that actually happened. That's my problem.
well, I mean, eyewitness testimony is usually the strongest evidence when we're talking about court, because even DNA can be misinterpreted. It just, you can have DNA at a place, but you don't know when it got there. You don't know how it got there. DNA you can interpret that so many ways. But if you have multiple eyewitness accounts, that makes the claim a lot stronger, um, and also gives a better interpretation to the evidence that supports it. And like the strongest evidence, I mean, there's so much evidence, like, but when we're talking about the resurrection, I think one, the fact that there's no body of Jesus Christ, like nobody, nobody, like this could have been done with. This could have, Christianity could have been in a coffin if there was a body. There were guards in front of the grave, and there was no body in the grave.
So,
And
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but just because you're putting it all out there, and I want to make sure that I don't forget the points you're making. Um, all these things you're claiming as fact are highly debatable, and it's not me saying this. It's scholars that I talk to on a regular basis. Uh, um,
the 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 uh uh the the scholars, there's a consensus on, the fact that, yeah, the body went missing, and his disciples of Jesus were fully convinced that they saw him
yes.
resurrect.
Oh yeah, I agree with you there. I agree with you on that point. But my issue is that you're choosing a supernatural explanation of something that's never been replicated, so as a way to show that it's actually a real phenomena in real life, over naturalistic explanations. Like
Well,
you're,
I
you're saying
mean,
the guards were there. The guards, that's not a fact that there were guards there.
well, well, I mean, there would be, like, this is the thing that would, I mean, it's kind of an argument from silence, but the fact that, these gospels, all these epistles, these were written to people. Like it's one thing if this was written to people who weren't there. These were people written, these books were written to the people who were eyewitnesses, to the people who lived in the area, lived at the time. Like that's like somebody coming up today saying, here go a book about, I don't know, Donald Trump. And they saying, oh, Donald Trump, you know, rose from the dead and did all these crazy things. And like, Donald Trump, like, no, we know Donald Trump. We seen him. He was the president. We know all about him. There would have been plenty of people to, like, put all types of information out to let people know that this book is completely false. Nobody's going to believe this.
But that's just
Christianity.
not true. There are gurus in India right now who have way more followers in real time, like apostles type,
Mhm.
uh, who attribute all the miracles of Jesus to someone like Satya Sai Baba, right? Who had something like 1 million followers. I mean, he threw a celebration in India about
Mhm.
I think a decade ago, or maybe a little bit more than that. And this wasn't uh, superstitious people in the first century who couldn't read. This was college educated, even people from the West who were convinced that this person was God on earth. The fact that people, I look, I
You talking
have
about
no problem.
you talking about the guy you talking about? I'm not familiar with who you're talking
I,
about.
I'll send you some links so you can see who it
But
was. But
you're saying that people believe this guy is God? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, and I'm not saying that there's any credibility to it. The point I'm making is that the fact that people believe in something, even the fact that people are willing to die for it, which I fully accept. Like I I believe that the apostles believed what they were saying. I believe that they died for their beliefs. Um, None of that, for me, is evidence that the claim is true. Why? Because we see it in all other contexts. People being certain of their experiences,
Well,
they
yeah.
turn out to be wrong. People who
Well,
die for their experiences, who turn out to be wrong.
right. Yeah, I get that. In most cases, though, people aren't going to die for something that they know is false. Like, are like, and it's not about believe. People will die for what they believe, but these are not. It's not the same as dying for something that you saw. That, like, if I say, hey, look, I saw, my door, right, closed by itself. Like, I know if somebody gets a gun to my head, I gotta think really, 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 really clearly. Like, okay, did I really see this door shut itself? Is this door? Is this that important to me that I'm really to lose my family, leave my kids without a father, leave everything that I love because I think this door shut itself. Is it that important? Even if it did happen, I would probably be inclined to lie about it and say, you know what, yeah, you're right, it didn't happen. You know what I'm saying? Unless there was something to lose, something to die for, you know, this claim, you know, it was they were willing to sacrifice everything they had because they know they seen something. They
Wait,
knew it. I mean, whether or not you believe that it happened, they knew what they saw, and they were not going to, to go away from it. It's not going
the,
to leave them.
the fundamental difference here is that you're confusing belief with knowledge. They believed that what they saw or thought they saw was true. I believe they fully
Well,
believed it. I don't think.
I thought I addressed that. You are going to say that they believe it, but in their minds they knew what they saw.
Well, that's what they would.
Like
Sure.
I can believe very strongly in something that didn't actually happen. I get that. You know what I'm saying? But in more, like, I could believe that, I don't know. I could believe that my car is going to help me get to work, but you know, I won't know it until I actually drive it to work.
How familiar are you with the history of cults in this country?
I mean, I'm familiar with cults. I don't know. Like,
And actually, it's funny because they just mentioned this in the comments. I was actually just about to get to it. Have you heard of Jim Jones?
yeah, I know about Jim Jones. Yeah, I was going to acknowledge that too. Yeah, like,
How do you explain? I mean, you're saying that people, you make it sound like it's unlikely that people will die for something that's not true.
well,
But we have
Jim Jones scenario, they didn't know they were going to die. Like,
no,
these people knew they were going to die.
No, that's not true. There are they killed themselves knowingly because they thought they were serving.
The people that drank the Kool-Aid, they didn't know they were going to die from it.
That's not my understanding. As far as I know, they knew they were going to die and they were leaving. It was their way to leave this plane of existence.
It's been a while since I studied up on it. From what I recall, they were deceived into drinking the juice, whatever it was, and they died. I'll have to, check back.
And it's also, it's not the only example, but there are countless examples in history, even now in the 21st century, of cults where the disciples are outnumbered the disciples that Jesus had, and you have these people that are convinced of the truth of what they claim, using the same kind of faith, like the same kind of, they feel it inside of them, and they're motivated by those feelings to believe that what they believe is the truth and that they know it's the truth. And what I'm saying is that that's just not good enough. People believe all kinds of different things. People have died for all kinds of different reasons. People have died even for not religious reasons. I mean, the kamikaze in World War II, the Japanese, who gave their life, they didn't give their life for something supernatural. They gave their life for naturalism. And yet they still died for it. And it wasn't even a supernatural context. So people have died all throughout history for what they believed was true.
Yeah,
it doesn't make it true.
And again, I think one of the strongest points about this is that the body was gone. Like I said, this could have been over and done with had the Roman guards, produced the body of Christ. I'm sure the the Romans did not want Christianity to take over their paganism. I'm sure they did not. They were crucifying Christians. They did not want this to be something taking over, the place at the time.
To a large degree, they were going after Christians not so much for their Christianity, but because they were refusing to engage with their government and pay tribute to their gods. Right. Not so much like if they said we're Christians, but they paid tribute to their gods as well. Most of them, in fact, a lot of them were given the choice, and some were killed, and some gave in to what the demands were. It's a missing body. The best explanation for a missing body is not that the fundamental laws of physics have been suspended so that a resurrection took place. That's just you have to first show that a resurrection is a real phenomena before you can say that it's the most reasonable explanation. I want to
What do
address
you
this.
mean, like the missing body? Y'all got to prove that was a real phenomenon.
No, not the missing body, the resurrection. Like you're stating the resurrection as though it's a historical fact, and I'm saying that history in principle addresses what most likely happened in the past. You can't attribute
What
likelihood.
what does history say about the resurrection? Like what does it say about a missing body? What does it say about the resurrection?
The history itself it tells what people's beliefs were, but it doesn't say the resurrection is not a historical fact. I mean, you're not going to find most scholars, including Christians who believed on faith, right, are not going to say that the resurrection is a fact historically.
Right. I get that they won't. I get that they won't acknowledge the resurrection as a fact, but I'm saying that the history of Jesus Christ and his body,
Yeah,
there what is the you have to deal with that. You can't just
sure.
say, okay,
Oh,
the resurrection,
I agree. I agree.
we never found his body, but we just know he didn't resurrect.
No. It's not that we know he didn't resurrect. It's that we have no reason to believe that he did. Like
Well, I mean, I think
you
a
have to
missing body.
show.
I think a missing body would give you a good. I think a missing body, and then a bunch of people claiming that they saw him resurrected is very solid evidence.
So I think this is the fundamental difference between us is that my standard of evidence is far higher. For me, what you just said, like I would take 100 explanations of things we've observed in the world, like the body could have been stolen, the body could have been thrown in a mass grave. It's not even certain that there were guards guarding the tomb at that point. There was not even certainty that he was put in a tomb that would have been solely his. Like you are, it seems to me that you are kind of dismissing more likely explanations,
Why are you
like
saying it's
grave robbers.
not certain? Why wouldn't there be guards there?
It's not what I'm saying; it's what scholars are saying that it's uncertain that there would have been. Why the details as to why? Like I for my like I'm willing to give you all the ammunition. Like I'm willing to think that maybe there were guards, but somebody stealing a body and getting past guards is more likely, from my perspective, than the laws of physics being violated and suspended to where now a body has resurrected. Because we've seen grave robbers being a thing. We've seen guards be fooled.
Well, I gotta say this thing, because I mean I haven't even gone over some of the like, because I normally like to prove all of this through the Old Testament, because there are so many prophecies in the Old Testament of who the Messiah would be and what he would do. That it's to me it's crazy. Like to say that this didn't happen is to say that like the Jews and Christians are the most powerful people to create a mass deception on the whole planet.
It's
You
not
know,
uh,
like there are so many. If you check out some of my videos on TikTok about even just the prophecies now, I don't know if you ever looked at the prophecy about the moon turning into blood, and
yeah.
how the moon is turning into hematite, which is translated as blood. The word that's used in the Bible, it says that the moon will turn into Haima, and that word comes from the word or the word hematite comes from the word Haima, and the moon is currently rusting and turning into Haima, and that's like a clear prophecy, you know. So to ignore all of the prophecies that lead up to Christianity, to me is just even after Christianity, the prophecies that are happening now is completely just to say that, yo, these dudes were way too, sharp.
So let me address that because I think it's important points. I think prophecy, actually, from my perspective, is the weakest form of argument for any religion, and I'll tell you why. One, a lot of these prophecies are extremely general, and the language can be twisted to fit any kind of event that you're talking about. Like all the prophecies about how the world is going to end, and war is going to break out, and disease is going to break out. These are things that humanity has dealt with since the beginning. Now, now there are other prophecies that, and again, it's not me saying this. Like I can send you the resources of
But
scholars saying this.
just address the one that I just said though. The Bible says that in the last days, it says the moon will turn into Haima. Okay, and now
Yeah,
what the scientists, even NASA, is saying today is that the moon is turning into hematite. It is rusting.
what they're saying, the blood moon is, I think it's, they call it the blood moon.
No, the
It's
blood
some
moon. A blood moon is just a blood moon, like when the moon turns red. You know what I'm saying? The Bible doesn't. It doesn't say that the moon. The moon doesn't actually turn red. It just appears red. But the Bible says that the moon will actually turn into the word Haima, which they didn't have. They didn't have a word for hematite, but hematite comes from the word Haima, and it is a red color, and that is, we didn't discover this until 2020 that the moon is turning into Haima.
my
2000.
understanding is that the moon is not turning red, and that the Bible doesn't mention the metal. But even if it was true, let's assume that you're right. I would need to see this article that NASA says this, because I'm not aware that that's the case. But the problem with this is that all religions have prophecies, some of which have turned to be true. For example, in Hinduism predicted almost to the T the age of the Earth. How they did this, I don't know, but it's, from my perspective, something that's much more difficult to predict than uh,
Who
something about
knows
the moon.
the Earth, as far as, like, how do you verify that? Just because science changes. you
Yeah,
know
but science doesn't change randomly. Science changes
I
because
say
of the evidence that
randomly,
comes in.
but they'll say one thing now, shoot, next thing you know, just like with this whole COVID stuff, that everybody's following the science, but every other week the science is changing.
So I have to disagree with you there. This is, I think, a common misconception, is that, I think science is the best tool we have to understand reality, and this idea that the science changes from week to week. No, I think a lot of
Science
people.
changes from week to week. I'm just saying that science does change, and science is wrong, on multiple theories that they have, and that, and I'm not against science. I am 100% for science, but I don't think it is the best way to deal with reality. To
I
understand
say, not only do I
reality,
say it's the best, I would say it's the only.
I think it is very important. But at the same time, you gotta trust the scientists. I trust science 100%. I'm for science, but scientists don't always agree, and there's always new theories. And
Sure, but
so
hold on
just
a second.
that you trust, science, I can say the same thing, but I don't
Let,
trust
let me
all
ask you, what is
scientists.
a scientific theory according to you?
Hmm?
What is a scientific theory according to you?
Something. Well, a scientific theory is, basically making assumptions based off of, you know uh multiple, evidences, I guess. you
No,
know
that
uh,
that I'm
pre-
sorry. I just have to jump in because that's not what a scientific theory. You're talking about a hypothesis. A theory is something that is far, far, far more precise than that. It's not just an assumption. It's a model that puts together a
right, right.
vast variation, or a vast compilation of observable facts, puts them in a context of experiments, of novel predictions. It is the most precise tool that we have to understand reality. Science doesn't change on a weekly basis. Science can evolve with new evidence. Of course, science can evolve.
But in order to have a scientific fact, you have to be able to put it in a lab and test it. Some theories cannot be tested.
But
So
well,
that's the reason why you can't make an assumption.
if you can't test it, it doesn't become a theory. You
Huh?
can't have if you can't test it, at least aspects of it, it doesn't become a theory.
Okay,
so I don't know what you mean by that.
In order to have a scientific fact, that's what I'm saying. In order for a theory to become a scientific fact, you have to be able to test that theory.
No, a theory is something that encapsulates many different facts. You're confusing the word theory the way that we use it colloquially, like, oh, it could be the case, like a speculation. Like usually people use the word theory like a speculation, but that's not the way that the word theory is used in science. It's a very different thing. A hypothesis is an idea that could be the case.
I generally know the terms, but like I said, in order to have a scientific fact, it has to be tested and proven to be true. That's all I'm saying. That's basically what I'm getting to.
Right. And so the point I'm making is that there are other religions who have prophecies, who are as specific and even more impressive than anything I've seen in the Bible, and yet you're giving particular credence to one set of prophecy, but ignoring other ones. One other thing I wanted to mention before I forget is many of these prophecies that people claimed were written before the facts are actually fraudulent. They were actually written after something had already happened.
That's not true.
I can send you the resources.
Are you talking about Bible prophecy?
Yes.
Yeah. They are. We've discussed. Are you familiar with the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Yeah, to some degree. And I'm not denying that some of that is true. I don't have a problem with that. But
well, let me just kind of brush you up, because the Dead Sea Scrolls is the Old Testament, Book of Isaiah, as well as the Tanakh. These are is basically the Old Testament Bible written before the times of Jesus. So when we take those into account, we know that these books were written before Jesus, and they couldn't just been written after to connect the dots.
No, sure, but if you have a blueprint to some degree of what's expected of you, you're gonna know what to follow.
Yes and no, because you still have to make other people do the things that that were prophesied to be done. You still have to make somebody take your clothes and gamble over your clothes after you're crucified. You can't just make that happen. Even though you have a blueprint to know, okay, yeah, I could ride through the city with a donkey. That's a fulfilled prophecy. He could have just said, that's what I'm supposed to do, so I'm gonna do it. But there are other aspects to the prophecies that other people who were non-believers did to Jesus that were prophesied that was going to happen too. So that's, like I say, that's why I say it's like, in order to say that this all just happened, that's like the biggest scam that a bunch of Jews did to deceive the whole world. And then I was just going to say one more thing. Well, just going back to what you were saying about other prophecies and other you said about the whole earth thing. Was that Hindu gods?
Hinduism. Yeah.
Hinduism. Yeah. Again, I even in Hinduism, those are, I believe that those are different spirits. I mean, the Bible does tell us that there are other spirits out there that claim to be gods and stuff like that, but they are not the ultimate God. And Hinduism even attests to the fact, because they're polytheists. They're like there's multiple gods. There's no one true God.
No, I do think, if I remember correctly, that there is an overarching God, but my point remains the same, that these are claims. These are,
and again, I believe that other spirits do have the ability to possibly see the future. That's why we got sidekicks. You know what I'm saying? Like, I believe some of that, is manipulation. But I do believe that there are witches and stuff like that who
But
could
the
possibly tell, talk to spirits that can tell them about, future events.
but these are all claims. These are all claims. The I mean, this is the problem: is that you don't have a way to show that these prophecies came true because of a supernatural
Well, I mean,
foundation.
I mean, you still got to look it up, but the fact that like 2,000 years ago, for them to say that the moon is going to turn into Haima, and the moon is actually turning into hematite, a word that comes from the word Haima, I think that's a very clear prophecy. That like if you are if you can be objective, you can look at this like, okay, how could they predict that the moon would turn into Haima, hematite, and you can come up with any way you can, but scientifically, we didn't even know that there was water on the moon until around the time we discovered this. If you just look into the science, look into like I said, what NASA is saying about it, you know, these are that to me is a big, just like, okay, like, you know, that's not a coincidence that they didn't just magically. Oh, and then also another one. If you check out one of my first videos on TikTok, um, uh, in Genesis, when you know the story about Adam and Eve, how God created Adam from the dirt of the earth,
Mhm.
and then God created Eve from the rib of Adam. Now, most people don't know why he chose the rib. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's because I mean, the Bible does say that she's bone of my bone, and flesh of my flesh." But the key factor is that the bone is the, I'm sorry, the rib is the only bone in your body that if you surgically remove it, it can regenerate itself. No other bone in your body can fully regenerate itself if you remove it. You
So let me get something clear. You take the Adam and Eve story as being a not a metaphorical one, but a factual one.
Yes, I do. To Yeah, I do.
I mean, this
I
is again. I don't take this in the wrong way. Like, this is not meant to be any kind of disrespect towards you, but this is just for me, from my perspective. You are blatantly ignoring reality when you say something
Actually,
like
I
that.
don't, because let me ask you something. Like, I've been looking into this, and I'm gonna be doing a video on this pretty soon. But like I said, there are multiple scientists out there. There are multiple geologists, archaeologists. There are multiple scientists who say, hey, the science actually confirms the Bible, and not these theories.
I mean, I've looked into it. These so-called scientists are usually preaching complete pseudoscience and are motivated by the religious bias.
Necessarily,
Uh,
because
eh,
even like Einstein, he believed in the God. He said
he believed in Spinoza's God. He didn't
okay,
believe in a
but okay,
theistic
but
God.
that's not the point, because you're an atheist, right? Yeah. So he even concluded that there has to be a God. You know,
No, he defined God as nature. He didn't
huh?
define God. His definition of God wasn't like a being that interferes with our lives or has
It doesn't
some kind
have
of
to be. It,
intention.
it, it doesn't have to be. What all that has to be is that there is a conscious mind that created the universe. There
So,
could the universe could not create itself out of nothing. That is it's nonsensical. Like, logically speaking, nothing comes from nothing.
but
You know, in
so let me
order.
address that. Let me address that because that's actually the theistic position to think that God made the universe from nothing. When you say the fact is that the scientific consensus, and I don't mean a few scientists that you can find that are likely have a religious background, but the scientific consensus um, is that evolution is true, that the Big Bang is true, that cosmology, that we don't, there's nothing about the universe being what it is that needs a designer. That's not to say that
What?
it's
No,
you
but
know
again, again, even science confirms that. Okay, you have to have, the you said the Big Bang is true. Okay, where did the Big Bang come from? half of scientists, but if you look, I looked at it, but if you look up yourself, half of scientists believe there's a God. Half of scientists around the world believe that a God created the universe. There's no logical way of saying a whole universe comes into place out of nothing. You
But that is what the theist is saying. The theist
know?
is,
But
but
these are
I,
scientists, though. When we're
well,
talking
hold
about
on.
scientific consensus, yes, you can't, put theology into, like a scientific theory, because science is based off of the nature. Science is based off of what can be observed. Okay, but even with that, you don't. If you can observe, everything has a source. Everything has a beginning. So
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I gotta cut you off. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off, but I can't just let that go.
mhm.
Um, that's just not true. I can send. I mean, I can send you links upon links,
What's
and
not true?
that everything that is must have a cause. In fact, the scientific consensus on that issue is not what you're claiming it is.
What is it?
Um, Say it again.
What is it then? What's the consensus?
So the consensus is, as far as the Big Bang right now, is that it may not even have been the beginning. That it may be a cyclical universe where there are many Big Bangs
That's
arising
not the
from any
consensus.
other. I
That's not that.
I
I've
mean,
heard you say
I
that
can.
before. That's not the consensus, because that's not observable. Like you can't observe a multi universe. That
No, but they have the reason why they say this is based on mathematical models. That there is an evidential. Like, I'm not saying that I believe it necessarily, but what I'm saying is that yes, you can have scientists that are religious, but they're not religious because of the science. As far as the number half, my understanding when I looked at the numbers is that most people in academia are, the more you go into the sciences, the more you go into the academia, the less religious people are. But even if it wasn't the case, the amount of people that believe in a claim is not what makes it true.
yeah,
Let me just clarify something,
I'm not
because
saying that
I
is.
think I misspoke. Begin to know who is a physicist. He says there is no scientific consensus
There we go.
on the origin of the universe.
There we go. So again, but the claim that I made was that everything that we can observe has a beginning. So if the universe has a beginning, then it has a cause. I mean, that's the only logical conclusion.
So
You
this
can
is not
you can
what
you
you're
can
saying
think
is intuition.
multiple. You could think of multiple different possibilities, but the only logical conclusion based off of the observable as evidence is that everything that we can see has a beginning, and the
So
universe
so this is false.
universe is expanding, which means that at some point in time it was condensed and it had a beginning.
So
So
this is actually, so let me address that, because you're saying the only logical conclusion is that it has a beginning. This is just not true. This is
based
called
off of the evidence,
no, but
the
that's just not the
observable
case.
as evidence.
Here's why this is wrong. And again, I'm not a physicist. So I'm not an expert here. I can only tell you what's been explained to me. Number one, causality is an emergent feature of the universe. It's not something that's fundamental. So
Well,
we
well,
observe
I hear what you said.
causality, like cause and effect,
Uh-huh.
um, is is not a fundamental feature. It's an emergent one. So, meaning that for you to claim that the universe must have had a cause is not does not align with what is stated in modern physics, as I understand it. Now, what you just described is actually not logical. It's a fallacy. It's to say, if um, I think it's the similar to the watchmaker fallacy. Like, a watch is complex, right? And it has a designer. The universe is complex, so it must have a designer.
I mean,
It's
that's not what
it's
I'm
no
arguing.
different than saying a watch was made in 1776. Therefore, the universe was made in 1776. Like,
No, that's
it
that's
doesn't work that way.
that's not even what I'm claiming. But and that's not even the argument. You're definitely characterizing
But you
the
said,
argument.
but you
But
said,
that,
if
I,
we
I'm
no,
saying,
because you said
I
we
said
observe a feature, right?
everything that has, everything that exists has a beginning. Everything that has come into existence has had a beginning. So in order for us to have a universe, something had to, cause it to come
But
into existence.
that's assuming something about cause and effect
Yes.
that that is not that it does not apply to modern physics. That's not
What do you mean?
it, so. As I understand it, and I wish that my brother was here because he's the physicist in the family and he would explain this to you far better than I can. But as I understand it, what we think of as a cause can be reversed to be the effect. Like if you rewind a tape, right? The effects become the causes, and the causes become the effect, and nothing about physics has been violated in that context. So this assumption, like you're looking at time as this linear thing, like that has a beginning, a middle, and an end potentially. And what I'm telling you is that physics doesn't look at space and time that way. It just doesn't. And what I can do, and we've had episodes on this channel before where I've had physicists come on and kind of explain why the evidence actually points to a very different kind of reality that you're describing.
I mean, honestly, this sounds like something that, like I said, that sounds like pseudoscience. I've never heard of anybody saying that that the effects is the cause.
It's not pseudoscience. It's modern physics. It's not pseudoscience. It's modern physics.
I've never heard of that.
I'll send you the resources.
So,
and
are you saying that we're living in a whole different like that sounds like reincarnation and stuff like that? Like
no,
the
not
time,
reincarnation.
we're in the Matrix or something, man.
No.
All of observable science says that everything that you still there? Hello.
Hey, sorry about that. My internet just gave out on me from my computer.
Are you good?
1 second. Let me actually. I've been having this problem a lot with this computer. It tends to crash halfway through the stream. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So, you're still there? Okay. I lost you for a second, but okay. I can see you now. No, what I'll have to do, is I'll send you these resources. I mean, we've had some episodes on this channel already. They're doing pseudoscience about this. This is very precise science that I can show you at a later date. I'll send you the resources and the articles.
The reason why I call it pseudoscience is because it's a scientific fact that everything that has everything that has come into existence has had a cause.
It's not.
That's observable. That's the observable evidence. The stuff that you're saying. The reason why I call it pseudoscience is because there's no consensus on that. That would be taught in schools. They teach the Big Bang as the well-held theory, and that or
nothing I'm saying is going. Sorry, but
the Big Bang tells us that there was a beginning and there was a cause.
That's not true. I'm sorry. I have to stop you. That's just not true. So
you're saying the Big Bang isn't the beginning of time?
No, that's not agreed upon.
Who?
So I'll say it again. The consensus in modern physics is that your version of causality is outdated. You're talking about
Albert Einstein.
I'm talking about Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein is the one that says that causality, that space and time is not linear the way you're claiming it is. That's, I mean, what we should do is, I would love to do this. You should come back on
sometime in the near future when I'll bring my my brother who's a physicist, and I think this conversation is better saved for that time when I can bring him on.
Yeah,
And
I mean, we could get back into that. Yeah, with somebody who's a little more knowledgeable. Like,
yeah,
or if you want to send me some, something to read up on, so I can see and I can see what the consensus is. But as far as I know, I mean, even it's just observable. Everything that you can see has a beginning. Everything that you can see has a beginning. So that logically flows that, when we get back to the Big Bang, you hold the Big Bang as well as I do, as a fact, right? You believe the Big Bang theory, right?
sure.
All right. So even with that as far as I've ever heard of the Big Bang theory, that was the beginning of time, space, and matter. You telling me something different, I have to look into it. But even logically, when we think about it, that is the beginning. Unless
But
like I said,
even if it was, I don't see that as
so for it to have a beginning, for us to have a beginning, where did it come from? It didn't just come from nothing.
But I
Something.
could say the same thing. But hold on, I don't think anybody's saying it came from nothing.
I mean, where could it came from then? Like,
But I can say this, I can ask the same thing about your God. Like what?
I mean, obviously, God has always existed, so that way it came from God.
So I could say, but I can say the same thing. I could say there could be a fundamental aspect or feature to reality that's always existed, and that's where everything else came from.
But when we're talking about the universe, and then also when you talk about, oh yeah, because I meant to talk about this too. But when we talk about evolution and stuff, the evolution that has been proven is microevolution, not macroevolution.
Again, this is just not true.
But
Macroevolution is what happens when microevolution is true.
no, microevolution is what happens when you get different species of a animal. Macroevolution is when you get a different kind of animal, like
Yeah,
fish,
these are
a fish turning into a rat.
hold on a second.
That's macroevolution.
That's just not true. That is a complete misconception of what the theory is actually saying. And again, this is I wish
that is not. That's microevolution is like basically speciation. You get different species. You get a wolf from a dog. You get a lion from a cat. You get a alligator from a lizard. That is, those are the same kinds of animals that through evolution they grow into the same kind of animal, but they obviously evolve. That is what is observable. If you look into Darwin's finches, like that is what's observable. That's what is clear. Macroevolution is looking up fossils and trying to put pieces together.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to keep
having
to stop you, but I can't.
That's not observable.
I can't let this kind of misinformation go through because the evidence for evolution far outweighs anything about fossils. The evidence for microevolution is, I mean, there are countless pieces of evidence that go way beyond fossils. Much of our modern medicine is based on facts that we've learned through microevolution. Again, microevolution is what takes place when microevolution is true. This is not me saying this. This is very easy for anybody to look up. What you're describing are, again, I don't mean any kind of disrespect, but I just have to say how I'm taking it. These are talking points from theists who don't actually understand the theories. And I'm not an expert. I would never claim to be an expert.
What we're saying is we have never observed like I said, a fish turning into a dog.
But that's not what evolution claiming is possible. That's not what evolution is claiming is possible.
I'm not saying that. Yeah, I'm just using that as a vague example.
Yeah, but it's a faulty example.
We have not observed one kind of animal turn into a completely different kind of animal. that's not observed.
Yeah, but I don't think that is not really what evolution is stating, as far as I understand it.
That's what it is. That's the whole monkey turning into a human.
That's not what evolution says. The evolution doesn't say that we came from monkeys. It says that we came from a common
Evolution
ancestor.
says that we all came from a rock. Like we all came from one common ancestor. And that's the thing about the whole evolution, this whole theory about how this atheistic theory about how the universe, the world, and life came into existence. To say that life came into existence through millions of years of nothing, just random events, is I mean, like, it is so just not logical. Like you can come up with any type of, you can use your imagination so as much as you can, but if you look at DNA and if you study how calculated, how much information is in DNA, it cannot just come out of just a rock hitting mud. It doesn't happen like that.
Okay, so let me just stop you, because the thing is this.
And one thing I also want you to look into, because one thing I'm looking
you're
into.
spewing pseudoscience. This is not. This is what you're saying. You are completely mischaracterizing what science is actually saying, and your incredulity about how we came to be and it having a chemical foundation. There's nothing illogical about that.
It's very illogical.
I mean, I'll take
are you like, have you studied DNA and just seen how complex it is, how much information, how designed
you won't find any person in the scientific consensus who claims that DNA has to be designed. You just not. You find the intelligent design people that claim this, but that's not the scientific consensus.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. Some people want to just deny the facts, but when you look at it, your DNA is more advanced than any technological advancement we have ever created.
There's nothing about DNA that assumes or that suggests design. You're not going to find any scientist.
It designs everything. Like, it designs a bird.
No, I'm saying it itself is not designed. No, I'm saying it itself is not designed by some creator.
It is basically a computer program onto how I'm going to create this human. This is how I'm going to create this cat. It's going to have blue eyes. It's going to use these genetics based off of his grandparents, his mother.
The complex structures and how they've come about have an explanation that does not require the assumption of a creator. Again, to
say that, like, to say that, okay, poof, a universe comes out of nowhere, and then
I'm not saying that.
I mean, essentially that's what you're saying, because
it's not.
Because we can't observe anything that you claim. We can't observe multi-universes. We can't observe any evidence suggesting that time is on some different spectrum that you were speaking of. We can't observe that.
But we can, and we have. Like,
we have observed this. How?
What, that time is not. You said what you said it was?
Time is backwards and forwards and all this.
Yeah, the evidence for this is overwhelming. And again, I'll bring you back when I can have my brother on.
If it was that overwhelming, there would be a consensus, and I'm yet to hear such consensus. As far as I've ever heard, the Big Bang is the beginning of the universe. That is the consensus that I've ever heard of when we're talking about the universe. So, but again, when we get back into a universe appearing, however you claim it appeared, and then a world, Earth being exactly where it's supposed to be at from the sun, to the point where if it was slightly closer or slightly farther, we would die. you
So
know,
I just want to say this for everybody listening. Because sometimes I struggle to think about how to approach this kind of conversations, in the sense that, from my understanding, what you're saying is science denial, but I'm not.
I don't
My degree is in philosophy. My degree is not in science, and so I acknowledge the fact that I'm not the one who's equipped to go into detail as to how these things actually work.
and that's why I said, look, I am fully for science. I love science.
I think if that was true, you wouldn't be saying the majority of what you've been saying.
No. I'm for science.
I don't think you understand science.
Okay, if there's a consensus, I love to hear it. I love to observe it and see what it is. Like I said, I've never heard these things that you're talking about. I've always heard that the beginning of the universe was the Big Bang. That's what I've always heard.
For everyone listening, I would say that, and I'm glad that you're willing. You say that you want to see these resources. I'll send them to you.
Give me the resources.
Yeah, I will. But for everybody listening, I want to say the following. We live in the 21st century. We have more access to information now than we ever have in the history of humanity. These things, for everybody that's listening, go look at what the talking points from the religious side are, as far as trying to put doubt on macroevolution, put doubt on the idea that complex structures can evolve over time and don't need a designer. These things are things that have been resolved and addressed by science and philosophy for about several centuries now, if not more. The only thing I can say is this, from everything I've heard, tonight. I've been offered no reason that I can see to be convinced that your beliefs aren't explainable simply by looking at psychology. I've seen no way to separate the imaginary from the actual, as far as resurrections, Holy Spirits, miracles. So far, to me, all these are claims. I want to ask you just quick. We're gonna probably close down soon, but I want to look at some of the questions in the comments. Iron Shirt here wants to know if you're vaccinated.
Hell no. No, sir. Not at all.
Okay. Let's see what else.
I would love one good reason for me, who's a person who's got COVID twice. And literally it wasn't nearly as bad as when I got the flu, to get vaccinated. I have no reason to get some.
Guys, do you have any other questions?
As far as me, you talking to me?
No, I'm talking to the audience. I want to see if they have any questions for us and for you.
How do I get to? I never used it before. I don't see any comments.
Oh, there should be a thing you can click on that actually says comment, but I'll read them to you if you can't see them.
Oh, there we go.
But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe we don't. They may not have any questions. I'm trying to try this way here. But yeah, like I was saying, for those listening, there are a lot of good resources that kind of break down the theistic counterpoints to the scientific facts, and those things can be explained better than I can on here. Okay, let's see.
Yeah.
Why does it make sense to you that God always existed, but not that the universe?
Because, well, so again, getting out of my personal experiences, because I mean, it's just tough to get through to. I mean, honestly, I think that's extremely strong evidence that you got billions of people saying that they had the same experience. You don't get that with Islam. You don't get that with uh, any other religion. You
Oh,
know.
this is a question about the universe. This is a
Yeah, I know.
question
I
of.
know. I'm getting to it. I'm just saying.
Oh,
You
okay.
know, once I get out of that, when I look at the world and I see the life that I see in the world, it doesn't make any sense to say that all of this came by an accident of just random events.
Why couldn't the
So,
universe have always existed?
so that's what I'm saying. So for the universe to always exist, to me, that would mean that God is the universe, if you want to say that. You know, the universe is just time, space, and matter. Okay, but how do we get creation? How do we get life out of random events of a universe?
Well, hold on a second. Why?
I
I'm
think the
confused
more
here.
appropriate. I think the more appropriate question is, how can or does the universe have a conscious mind versus it being eternal? I mean, I
Why would
think.
the universe being eternal or infinite have anything to do with randomness?
Huh?
Why would the universe being eternal have anything to do with random events?
Because what I'm saying, I guess what I'm saying is, the universe existed always, okay, but how did the universe just randomly
But how did the God get there?
produce?
Why did
No,
God?
I'm saying, how did the universe randomly just produce life the way it did? To say that it just has no consciousness, I think is the more appropriate question, because the universe could have always existed, okay, but the fact of the matter is that we have life here on Earth, and how did we get here? You know,
So
that's the
okay,
question of the matter at hand. You know what I'm saying? To say the universe just existed, I'm okay with the universe always existing. But what does the evidence say? The evidence doesn't say that the universe always existed. You know, the evidence doesn't show us that the universe always existed. I, I'm I'm not aware of anything saying that the universe, I'm not aware of any consensus that the universe has always existed, and some of the stuff that you were saying earlier. So I think
yeah.
that's the biggest thing, is that
To,
there's no evidence saying that the universe always existed, and the evidence shows that everything has a beginning, and it leads to a bunch of questions on how life just came into
so
existence.
for those listening, this is what I call a fallacy of incredulity. It's the not being able to imagine something not being the case. Therefore, we must have had another explanation. Historically, religion has it's also God of the gaps argument. It's historically it's religion has said, well, God explains this phenomena until
No,
science
that's not
does.
that's not the case. It's what makes more sense. It's not. I'm not saying that this stuff couldn't happen. I'm just saying, logically, what makes more sense based on the evidence.
Yeah, I agree.
Based on the evidence,
I agree.
we cannot observe anything that is eternal.
It is because of the
We
evidence.
cannot observe anything that doesn't have a beginning.
It is because of the
Based off of the
evidence.
evidence,
We disagree on the evidence because it
huh?
is based. We disagree on the evidence
No,
because from
we know what the evidence is. There's evidence of life. There's evidence of a Big Bang. There's evidence that time, space, matter has a beginning. We there's plenty of evidence to show that. I don't know if there was some evidence that the universe was eternal, then that would be the theory. Not
no, but what I'm saying is that the evidence doesn't point to there having to be a designer.
the,
That's
the,
what I'm saying.
the evidence does. I mean, like I
So
said, yeah,
we have to
we
agree to
can
disagree
agree.
there.
We can disagree on the interpretation of the evidence, but the evidence is clear. And
I agree. I think it's,
the
and I'll
evidence
go
of
with
a
the scientific
designer,
consensus.
the evidence of a designer is clearly shown when you just observe the fact that
The
everything that we see on this planet cannot just come randomly. Like it.
I'm not saying
Like
it's random.
to say that just a bunch of random events happen. A
But that's
comet hit, and
but
then
that's not
this
what I'm
happened,
saying.
and then
I'm not saying it's random.
a random goo and stuff, and then that was the first life form, and then all these other Pokemon just jumped out of a rock. It doesn't.
Yeah, so
It
these are.
doesn't really like logically seem like, okay, yeah, I can see that happening. That that makes sense. No, like you literally are just pulling a rabbit out of a hat.
No, but these are all of this is entirely a straw man of science. I'm not saying that anything here has to be random. I'm saying that.
Let me ask you this: do you know? Do you know how every life happened on Earth and everything got to where we're at now?
No, obviously, I don't think we have certainty about how it began. What we do have is a history of science answering what religion pretended it answered.
But no, it doesn't though. It just clears things up. Like for instance, like when we say one thing I'm going to do a video on is Pangea. If you look up, you familiar with Pangea in the supercontinents, right? You familiar with that?
I think so.
It's when basically when all of the continents were together, and then the scientific theory is that they all, just because of the plate tectonics and the cores, I gotta look at the information again, but continental drift just happened, just overnight. Basically, it just that's how the planet was together, but it was geared to split apart eventually. But when you look up the Great Flood, when you look into a Great Flood, if you I know a lot of people is very controversial talking about a flood, but if you look up the Great Flood, that explains a continental drift.
Yeah.
That's
So
only,
again, I want to, for everybody listening to what's being said,
a whole continent doesn't just split up just over time because that's the way the planet was geared. No, if you look into a global flood, that has enough impact to split a planet or split a continent up from another. Okay, so when we're talking about these scientific theories and stuff, that's the reason why I say, yeah, I do follow science. I do.
I really don't think you do, and I don't mean that. I'm not trying to be combative.
I'm not saying I'm I'm not just looking at science all day, every day. That's not my.
No, I'm not saying that, but
what I'm saying
you're stating
is,
things that are.
What I'm saying is, if there is clear evidence and there's science that backs it up, I'm open for it, and I'm definitely, if there is a consensus on a matter, I'm geared to lean towards the scientific.
So let me ask you something. If the scientific consensus was brought to you that said that macroevolution is real, would you believe it?
Yeah.
If the scientific consensus was,
if it was provable, if there was concrete evidence to say it, I'm open to believe it. Let me ask you this: if Christianity was true, would you believe it? Would you become a Christian and walk?
Yeah, if you could bring me evidence that you were able to separate from your imagination, like that is beyond what you've described, like I had a change in my life. If you could show that a resurrection is a possible event in a laboratory, I would convert.
That's the problem. That's the problem you're having. Like, I'm okay with being skeptical. I'm not against skepticism. I'm all for skepticism, but that's hyper skepticism. We're talking about.
I don't think it's hyper skeptical. I don't think that's true.
Yeah, it is because we're talking about. Well, okay, so here's the thing.
Hold on a second. I'm sorry. I have to reply to that because not accepting a resurrection is not hyper skepticism.
No, it's what you require as evidence. I can't prove. I can't I can't go back in time and put Jesus back on the earth and put him in a lab and show you how he resurrected.
Sure, but if
I
sure, but
can't
if
do
a
that.
resurrection is possible, then there should be a way to show that. Obviously, yeah, we can go back in time. But
Like I can't do that. You know, all I can do is give you actual evidence and the
you
evidence
haven't.
that is available.
Yeah,
And
but
and
you haven't.
ultimately, again, you know, so this is the problem that I have, and this is why I say hyper skepticism, because there is historical evidence. There is, logical evidence, to Christianity. Okay. But ultimately,
I'm yet to hear it.
ultimately, the only thing you have to do is seek God to actually get the proof. Okay. Ultimately, that's what you have to do. And most people just don't want to do it. Like if I told you, hey, look, I can guarantee you, if you do this, you will get $1 billion. You would be stupid to be like, you know what? That doesn't make sense. That's not logical. There's no evidence for that. I can't see how that can happen. But I'm like, yo, I'm telling you, there's 1 billion people who have lived and died and said, look, if you do this, you will get $1 billion. And I'm not telling you to jump off a cliff. I'm not telling you to drink the Kool-Aid. I'm not telling you to do nothing crazy. I'm telling you, if you look up Acts 2:38, if you do that, you will get something. You will have an experience that you cannot deny. It's undeniable. Okay. If you actually want to observe the proof, if you actually want to know the truth, okay, then you would actually do that wholeheartedly and see if these things are true. Okay. If you tell me, hey, look, I have undeniable proof that the universe is eternal. Okay. All you have to do is read this big old book. You know, I mean, like, okay, let me read the book. Let me see if this is true. Like, if I really want to know the truth,
Sure.
because most people just like to argue. Most people like to debate. Most people
Yeah,
have
yeah.
their own stuff going on. But if I really want to know the truth, hey, where did we come from? What is the actual truth? Then I would actually listen to you, and you said, hey, you know what? This is what you got to do. And I'm not telling you to do nothing unreasonable, you know. If Christianity isn't like some cult where we're telling you gotta sell your soul. It's literally love. It's like the you sum up Christianity in love.
I
Love
mean,
your neighbor.
I
Love
think that's definitely another conversation for another time. I think that's debatable, but
But
um,
your interpretation of it is different. But
sure, sure.
I'm saying from its own source, God is love, and the greatest two commandments is to love God and love your neighbor. That is from Jesus' words himself. So again, I'm not asking you to go, like I said, drink some Kool-Aid. All I'm saying is, look, bro, if you do Acts 2:38, if you do that with your whole heart, you will have all the proof that you need. Stop worrying about what everybody else and what scientists say and what all these other people say. What about you? Do you know for a fact, without a doubt in your mind, that God doesn't exist and
No,
Jesus is not God?
no,
If
no,
you
no,
can't say, I know without a doubt,
no, no. No, I would never say that. I would
yeah,
never
you
say that.
don't know without a doubt.
No,
So,
no, of
so what
course
I'm
not.
telling you is, I know without a doubt that I've had a experience with Jesus,
You,
and
you,
me, for like I
that's
said,
what you believe.
this is my belief. Yes,
Sure.
I believe without a doubt that Jesus is God. Okay, but what I'm trying to tell you is that there's one way to prove Christianity, and that is through Acts 2:38.
That
If, if
so
you if you do that for yourself, that is all the proof that you'll ever need.
we have. So let me leave it at this because what you just said is fundamental. I think it shows the real difference in perspectives. Because for you, that is all the proof that somebody needs. For
It is.
me, it is so not even like a shred of the necessary evidence that a reasonable person should require to believe that Christianity is true. That we operate in two entirely different realities as far as what we find convincing.
Bro, so you tell me, if if you if something takes control of your body and you feel a strong presence, and you start speaking in tongues, or you start prophesying. I've been prophesied to. My wife was a Muslim when I met her, and she converted to Christianity as soon as she got the Holy Spirit. She was a devout Muslim and was not leaving it, until what happened. So you tell me, you say you're a reasonable person. So if you felt something supernatural happen to you, you tell me that that's not enough evidence to say that.
I would never frame it as knowing that it was something supernatural. I would assume that there were naturalistic explanations and psychological explanations, because we can actually point to those things as being part of reality.
No, you can't.
We do all the time.
It's not like I'm not telling you, hey, look, there is no psychological explanation. Like you can say, oh yeah, that could be, schizophrenia, or that could be this.
No. I'm not talking about. I don't mean like that. I'm not talking about somebody being crazy. I'm talking
I'm
about.
not saying that you're saying that. I'm just saying, like, you're trying to find some type of way to explain it away as a just normal.
Because I'm not going to assume that the supernatural is a thing a priori. Like you're just assuming.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like you can have a supernatural experience, and it's not just a feeling. I'm not just talking about the feeling. The feeling is like something that you will feel.
The supernatural component is what you have to show is a real thing.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. When you experience, because I could tell you all the time. I could say, hey, look, this person, I know somebody who got diagnosed with cancer, and then she came to church. We prayed for her. She went back. She was going to have her, her first, trial or whatever. And they tested her for the cancer again. Cancer's gone.
I know atheists that went into full remission without having prayed.
I get it. But what I'm just trying to say is, like, I could tell you all these stories all the time, and you could find a way to explain them. But when something happens to you, when you have an experience that you cannot deny, then you have to reason within yourself. Am I tripping? Is this just my imagination?
Well, that's the thing.
You will have to deal. You will have to deal
not going to give me
with what you are experiencing. You can't just say, "Oh, I don't believe him because he's a Christian. I don't believe him because I couldn't explain that." With science.
It's not that. What I'm suggesting to you, Julius, is that there's no way to differentiate when having an experience that experience is pointed to something real as opposed to some kind of delusion. Me having an experience is not going to be proof that the experience I'm having and the contextualization of that experience is true. It's just not how epistemology works.
Dude, so when you have an experience, and then, or for instance, if somebody just came up to you and said, hey, look, I know that you did this when you were 12, you did that when you were 15, and you're going to do this tomorrow. And then that happens. Everything that he said was true. Then psychologically, how do you explain that?
Well, I don't even really know what that means.
That means somebody just prophesied to you. That's what I'm saying. When you get the Holy Spirit, you get gifts of the Spirit. A true believer, and that's the thing that a lot of people miss. There are a lot. The Bible talks about a lot of false prophets. The Bible says that there are going to be many who claim Christ that are not going into heaven. Okay, so people look at these examples of Christians, and they are not actual true Christians. A true Christian has the Spirit of God in them. The Bible says clearly, if you don't have my Spirit, you are not of me. Okay, so a true Christian who has the Holy Spirit can prophesy, can heal people, can do all types of different things.
So let's leave it there.
So what I'm telling you is that somebody will prophesy. Somebody has prophesied to my wife, my sister, in different aspects. Somebody can prophesy to you and tell you something that there's no way to logically say, oh yeah, I know how he knew when I was 12, I had to deal with that. You know, there's no logical way to say that, you know, other than he's just a good guesser.
So
You
we hit the 150 mark. So we're gonna start closing down here. But I just want, for everybody listening, kind of as a closing remark here, I think this is a testament to the way in which people, how would I say this? The standard of evidence for somebody like myself is going to be vastly different than the standard of evidence for you. Most of what I heard tonight were more claims than evidence, more claims than facts. I not against the idea that somebody who come along and, you know, make a prophecy that could have some effects on my life. It's still all the burden of proof to show that there's something supernatural there going on. It's still on you to actually show that.
I mean, like I said, if somebody says something that happened to you years ago and they are 100% accurate in everything that they just said, I ask you, how do you explain that psychologically?
I mean, certainly I don't explain it. It depends on what the prediction was. If it's something like you're gonna get sick at some point, well,
no. If he said like, okay, you know, 5 years ago, you know, I don't know, you used to play with Johnny and Johnny was this and Johnny did that, and then you remember that day when, you know, you fell and hurt your knee, you know, but more specific, you know, just more specific stuff that happened in your life that nobody would really know.
Yeah, I mean, I would need evidence that something like that could actually
No, but I'm saying if it did happen, I'm saying, what if I came up to you and said, hey, look, you know, this happened 10 years ago, and then tomorrow somebody's gonna randomly a Bible's gonna throw a Bible in your lap. You know, I can send one of my
I probably would just be questioning what was happening. I would be trying to ask them more questions, try to understand who it was I was engaging with. I would try to understand if they could have seen me or what the circumstances are. Certainly, I wouldn't jump to therefore God because somebody made a prediction.
Well, the issue again is like there's no logical way to explain somebody knowing that much stuff about you, where the point like, okay, nobody was around, and then he's predicting something that's going to happen.
There are people who use mind manipulation, like someone like Darren Brown, who basically can read somebody's mind. Is he still there? Did he disappear? Can you guys still hear me? Are you guys still there? Hey, can you guys still hear me?
Hey, I don't know what just happened.
Can you hear me? I'm right here.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know what
it says. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can see now.
Oh.
So, you know, I'll say, you know, I do appreciate that you came on here to discuss with me. You know, like I said, I definitely I don't agree with your understanding of science and what you find convincing, but at the very least, I can respect you for coming on and at least having the conversation, because so many people, you know, talk online and say this and that, but they don't make that step of actually engaging the other side. So I do appreciate that, and
Yeah, like
maybe
Send me some information, man. I'll
Yeah.
definitely read up. If you want to have another discussion, we could talk about it. I'm definitely open, you know.
Yeah,
And
and I'll bring you back at some point too when I can have some people who are more with this and the science end of things than me, because I'm not the person equipped to really have the conversation. But
yeah, let's do that, man. Send me some information. Let me look into it.
sure.
Like I said, I'm 100% open mind with science. Like when it comes to science, like when we're talking religion, I'm extremely biased, but I'm very logical. I'm open minded, in a general sense. Um, I've looked into religion so much. Like if you want to talk about Islam, if you want to talk about Judaism, I can bury those under the ground. Okay, science. I know on a general sense with science, I am intrigued by science. I do like science. I like the when we talk about evolution. I love animals. I love this planet. So anybody talking about science and whatnot, I'm open to it 100%. Some of the stuff that you said today, like is new information. I definitely want to see, credible
Sure.
information on it so I can research it.
And some of this is already on my channel. Like some of this information, you can go into some of the prior episodes where I have a bunch of physicists on to talk about these things. So I'll send you the links to those specific episodes, and you can take a look at some of that. But I'll
Yeah,
also send you
I mean,
some research.
I'd appreciate just more, like, because I like going to sources,
Sure.
like when we talk about history and whatnot. I like to go to like I said, I got an article with NASA about the prophecy about the moon. I give you a credible source, so I can like actually see how, because certain people, like I said, people interpret the information differently. So when if you give me an actual source, I can see what the actual science actually shows, and conclude based off of observation, and not, like I said, because I trust science. I don't trust scientists, or some scientists, as I said before. So I just want to see what the evidence is, and then like I can rock with it. Like either way, I'm cool with eternal universe or macro evolution. All of that. That doesn't change the Bible. It doesn't change the Bible at all. Just saying that evolution happened doesn't mean that God didn't make evolution happen. That didn't come about it that way. You know, there's many ways that you can look into science and back the Bible, because the science actually backs the Bible.
Again, I think that's a highly debatable claim, but maybe perhaps one for another time. And like I
Yeah,
said, I appreciate
you send me the
you coming on.
information and we can look at it. And like I said, we
Sure.
can some other time.
Great. Well, thanks again. I appreciate
No
it.
problem at all, man.
So,
Thanks for having me.
no problem. Take you out of here. Thanks again. So, thank you again, everybody that's come today to join this episode. I hope that it was at least somewhat enjoyable. I know that we're a bit all over the place, but I think I had a good time. As always, if you want to support what we're doing, Axioms on Trial, or patreon.com/Axioms on Trial. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. And I think J Mike will be joining us again. I think on Tuesday. I may try to do an episode before then. Maybe I might try to do one tomorrow. There's some emails and some comments that I wanted to respond to that I'm going to address to you guys. And then we may have another Kristen coming on. And another thing, if you guys have any suggestions of the kind of shows that you want to see, the kind of conversations that you would like to have or see on the channel, anything of the sort, just let me know in the comment section. Any clips that you would like for me to break down, I would be very happy to do that for you guys. So I hope everybody has a great rest of your night, and we will resume the show soon. So thanks again, as always. Take care, guys.